much rather be in Washington, Michigan than in Washington, D.C. right now.
President Trump taking the stage outside of Detroit, rallying supporters there, while journalists back in Washington put on their black ties.
Is this better than that phony Washington White House correspondence? Is this more fun?
The base has been longing for years about somebody who punches back.
Very, very dishonest people. Fake news. Russian collusion. Give me a break. Comey's a liar and a leaker. North Korea, and a lot of good things are happening there. What do you think President Trump had to do with it? I'll tell you what. Like, how about everything?
A migrant caravan traveling through Mexico for weeks, arriving now at the southern border.
Border Patrol has encountered or apprehended several members who've been climbing over the fence.
We have to have borders, and we have to have them fast. We will make America strong again, proud again, safe again. We will make America great again.
Who's gonna work for the working man? For the working man. Get your hand in the dirt. Who's gonna work?
Welcome to this Sunday edition of Fox and Friends. That was the president last night. You may have caught the speech. If not, we're going to bring some of it to you, of course, this morning. But before we do, what's up with Griff?
I got my hair back. Good hair.
He got his hair back.
Small shoulder problem, but the hair is doing well. We're ready to roll.
But the big question is, why is Griff wearing a sling? So if you were watching this show yesterday, you probably saw the fun that we had out on the plaza, the fun the dogs had. And then, of course, we decided, let's let the humans do what the dogs do.
Why not
Because
try?
that sounds like a brilliant idea. So take a look at that.
Pete Hegseth! He did not make it. Good job, though. No, he didn't catch it. Griff, right now. It's your turn.
Ready, go!
Oh, but so Griff emerges from the water and he's throwing his arms up and he looks happy, but I can see something in his face. He's like,
And it turns white.
And then we turn away from the camera and Griff goes, I think I hurt my shoulder. I think I hurt my shoulder. And I look down at his shoulder and it's like 4 inches too low.
Watch this jump, though. It's like Superman going into the water.
What happened?
It was the extension. So I extended myself. So this is Ed Henry's fault because there is a competition here, and I watched your jump, and you made it about 17 feet. So I was really laying myself out there. Now, my shoulder may not be in as much trouble as my ego, particularly with my big wave surfing buddies, because I knew it was shallow. I knew what I was doing, but I just put myself so far out there to beat your 17 feet that I got too arced.
And then you threw your arms up. Your pain threshold sort of impressive.
Dr. Matt Gotlin, who saved me and put this shoulder back in its place, and we'll show you a little bit later of how far it went out, saw this video and said, man, I can't believe you put your arm up. I
said, a picture. There's your doc. Yeah, yesterday.
There's Matt Gotlin there at NYU, and it's Dr. Mark Siegel. Our Dr. Mark Siegel is a lifesaver. I cannot thank him enough.
This is the best picture of the morning.
Wait.
There's this.
This is, okay, so last night, Griff and I, we both stayed at a hotel near here for the show today, and Griff and I had some pizza at the bar, and
look at this. Pete is cutting pieces for Griff.
He couldn't cut his pizza. And we kind of posed for the photo to do it as a joke, and then I'm sitting there watching Griff, and he can't cut his pizza. So I actually had to cut his pizza for him. It's not fake news.
You know what? This is what friends are for. We don't just come here to do this show.
That's
In
right.
real life, we are good friends, and we help each other out. And Griff, everyone felt so sorry about that yesterday. You were such a good sport. No one else would have handled it the way Griff did, and come on the next morning to say, you know what? I'm still here to work.
I'm still here. Well, I wouldn't miss it for the world, but it was one of those things. You talk about Trump and Macron, like the bromance, like Pete cutting my pizza. Like I'm really endeared to him. This is tough, and this is Dr. Siegelig and Gotlin there telling me I've got to keep this thing in there to keep it from falling out. Pete also, by the way, had his young daughter, so he's tending to the elderly, which would be me, while attending to.
I'm feeding my 8-month-old and my 47-year-old Griff.
Did you cut the bites the same
Both
size for
small
each?
bites for each of them. Yes.
That is a great scene.
It was great.
Well, Griff, we are thrilled that you're here this morning.
We'll be poking fun at you all morning, for sure.
Send us your thoughts this morning. Anything you want to say to Griff
Should his
for
tie
being
be
here, for being a champ.
outside or inside? What do you think?
Friends at Fox News.
Well, I will say this. I did, though. It did give me a chance to prop up in my hotel bed, get comfortable, and watch the president's speech in Washington Township, Michigan last night. It was quite something. I think we have a montage here.
Of course
we'll just give you a best of hits.
I'd much rather be in Washington, Michigan than in Washington, D.C. right now. Is this better than that phony Washington White House correspondence? These people, they hate your guts. Shut. And then I'm supposed to... What about Comey? You watch him on the interviews? Comey's a liar and a leaker. I did you a great favor when I fired this guy. Because when you look at what was going on at the top of the FBI, it is a disgrace. The two lovers, right? Lisa and Strzok. Look at how many of those top officials were fired or removed. Politicians have fallen for this junk. Russian collusion. Give me a break. The denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. I had one of the fake news groups. What do you think President Trump had to do with it? I'll tell you what. Like, how about everything? No. African American unemployment has reached the lowest level in history. Kanye West gets it. We need security. We need the wall. We're going to have it all. And again, that wall has started. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you.
It was something. 1 hour and 20 minutes, a stem winder. It was entertaining. It was rousing. And he hit on some themes you're going to keep seeing here. We didn't play the part about Maxine Waters. If we did, only briefly. He's saying they're going to try to impeach me no matter what, firing that crowd up to say you got to come out in 2018.
He used Ronnie Jackson as a great example. He said, look what they did to him.
Yes.
They totally ruined him. They put it all out in the public to see. That's what many people are trying to do. They're trying to tear me down. They're trying to tear down this administration. But as you saw out there last night, as you said, Pete, this is classic President Trump. He's in his comfort zone, in his element, a reminder of how he was on the campaign trail.
I love he attacked Senator Tester, too. He said, I've got things on him. So maybe we'll get to hear more about that.
But it's amazing. He's making a larger point that Ronnie Jackson was smeared in the media for day after day after day at anonymous sources. Yet I turned it to another network, what the president calls fake news CNN, after the speech, and they went for like 30 minutes on a panel about that. They're like, president threatens a senator. How could he threaten a senator? Like, they don't understand the larger critique he's making. Even the critique of he's in Washington Township, Michigan, and the rest of the swamps in Washington, D.C. He talked about fake news, and that you heard the crowd there chanting. You may not have picked it up. No bell, no bell, no bell.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
When he was talking about North Korea. So a lot of people. And he said, who gets credit for it? Me. Everything.
Well, you said everyone else was in Washington, D.C., and why? For a dinner that you got invited to, Griff, but another reason why we love you, you stayed here. So the White House Correspondents' Dinner was last night in Washington, D.C. The president was not there, but probably the right decision for him, because there were more laughs at his rally than there were at the dinner last night. Michelle Wolf is the comedian that... So they always bring in comedians for these dinners. And she was hoping to get some laughs, but she went pretty deep and she went pretty personal on some heated attacks directed specifically at women, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Take a listen to some of this.
All right. I'm a little starstruck. I love you as Aunt Lydia on The Handmaid's Tale. Ms. Pence, if you haven't seen it, you would love it. She burns facts, and then she uses that ash to create a perfect smoky eye. Like, maybe she's born with it, maybe it's lies. I'm never really sure what to call Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You know, is it Sarah Sanders? Is it Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Is it Cousin Huckabee? Is it Auntie Huckabee Sanders? Like, what's Uncle Tom but for white women who disappoint other white women?
So now, if you've just watched that for the first time, it may upset you. Let me give a little context here, and that is the White House press secretary, Dana Perino, can talk about this. In my years working with Tony Snow, I got a really close view of it. The press secretary is there for the press. So if there's one friend, one ally in the White House, as you're a member of the press trying to cover it, that's your person to try and get you the information. So there is a real relationship. You got to be there. This is the first time I remember, and I have attended this dinner several times over many years, that I have seen the comedian stoop this low in attacking the press secretary. It's a White House press dinner. And so you go after the very person, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who we should definitely talk about how stoic and how remarkable
and how beautiful she did look in that moment.
But this was in the realm of cheap shots. It's an 11 out of 10.
But do you attack on looks? Do you get so deep? I mean, Pete, we have seen time and time again, when you go that low, you never win. As you said, this happens all the time at these dinners. But why? Because often you get criticized, as this comedian was just hours after, saying,
and nobody laughed.
Disgusting.
It was boring. It was unfunny. It was smug. It was self-important. You know, Ari Fleischer, another press secretary, tweeted this out in real time while watching this event. He said, "This is foul. It's uncalled for, it's nasty, and not funny. The White House staff should stop attending this dinner." I totally agree with that. In fact, Trump should never go. He should never go to this dinner. There's absolutely no reason for him to go. So, except I want to introduce the Greg Gutfeld corollary. Unless Greg Gutfeld is the host. Because I turned the channel after that.
He would be funny.
He did a live show last night. The guy is hilarious. And imagine if they actually brought in a funny person who happens to be conservative, poke a little fun, if Greg Gutfeld hosts, then the president should
He's
show
conservative,
up.
but he's surprising. And that's what is lost in comedy today. You know where every comedian stands, and you know what the jokes are going to be already.
Yeah.
You know, you want someone that surprises you, that makes you laugh and makes you think about things in a different way.
Yes.
Doesn't happen anymore.
Predictable is boring.
Yes.
That's why the Trump speech in Michigan was so much more entertaining. I watched it for an hour and 20 minutes. I'm like, it could have gone on for another 40 minutes and I've been fine, because you never know what's coming next.
Unscripted, exactly.
And the people watching certainly felt what those in the room in Michigan felt, which was the connection that I've been with you all along. You elected me because I gave you voice, and those elites in Washington, I'm not going to be there because if I, as the president said in the speech, if I don't laugh, then they mock me. If I laugh, they mock what I'm laughing at when he's being made fun of. So very strong.
You can't even get out of bed.
Send us an email at friends@foxnews.com. Tell us what you thought of the speech.
Well, and Griff could barely get out of bed today. So we're just glad he's here. Try not to break anything.
You're such a trooper. All right, we've got some other headlines we were following this morning, starting with a nationwide manhunt for an accused cop killer. It is now over. Police arresting this man, John Williams, with the fallen deputy's own handcuffs.
I felt that it was fitting where he killed my deputy, Corporal Gene Cole, and he was brought to justice using Cole's handcuffs.
That he was. Williams was found at a camp in Maine after a 4-day manhunt. He's expected to appear in court later this week. Police say the 29-year-old killed a Somerset County Sheriff's Corporal Eugene Cole. You can see him there, the 13-year department veteran. He leaves behind a wife and 4 grown children. It's just so sad. Also, this members of the migrant caravan now illegally entering the U.S. in several instances. Children and pregnant women sneaking in through a canyon notorious for drug and human smuggling.
Watch the caravan. Watch how sad and terrible it is. The crime that they inflict on themselves and that others inflict on them. It's a horrible, dangerous journey for them.
Well, in a statement to Fox News, Chief Patrol Agent Rodney Scott warns in part, quote, "We expect everyone to enter through our front door and answer questions honestly."
Yeah, following that closely. We'll bring more on that today.
All right, praise keeps pouring in for the president after the historic meeting between North and South Korea. Some supporters even hinting at the Nobel Prize.
That's very nice, thank you. Nobel. I just want to get the job done.
Our next guest thinks he deserves it and that President Obama's prize should be stripped.
Can they do that? And one university is now treating masculinity as a mental health issue. We're serious. You might have that
I love
problem,
that you read
too.
that too.
Yeah, I think I might have a problem.
I spoke to the president this morning of South Korea. He gives us tremendous credit. I remember, it was very rough 3-4 months ago.
President Trump touting his involvement in the historic end to the Korean War. So, does President Trump deserve credit for this diplomatic achievement and perhaps eventually even the Nobel Peace Prize? Well, our next guest thinks so, and he just wrote an op-ed on this very topic. Joining us now is national security expert Harry Katsianis. He's also the director for defense studies at the Center for National Interest. Harry, thanks for joining us this morning. So, out the gates, you make the case that this is worthy of a Nobel Prize. Explain why.
I do, Pete, and I think actually it's a slam dunk, to be honest with you. Think about it like this for a second. We gave, President Obama the Nobel Prize for essentially doing nothing, for essentially being just President Obama not being George W. Bush. If that's the case, you have to give the Nobel Prize to Donald Trump, considering the fact how far we've come with the North Korea crisis. And I think we need a little context here. Go back to January when we were talking about, a bloody nose option with North Korea. We were actually staring down the precipice of a nuclear war. Millions of people would have died if that had happened. So considering how far we've come and how we're on the brink of something potentially historic, I think you have to really consider the president for a Nobel.
So, Harry, critics will say you're getting, whoa, you're getting way ahead of yourself here. What if it all falls apart? What if the talks go sideways? What if the nuclear ambitions ramp up? What if?
Well, I think we're still in a good position. And let me tell you why, Pete. The president's maximum pressure campaign is essentially the old Cold War playbook of containment. This is what we did to the Soviet Union for, 50 plus years. And this is how we were able to essentially put them in a nice little box. And eventually the Soviet Union collapsed. The same thing can happen in North Korea. And we have evidence of that. If you actually look at North Korea's foreign exchange reserves, they're running out of money. That means, Pete, within a couple months, North Korea will actually be bankrupt. You can't really build a lot of nuclear weapons or ICBMs if you can't feed your people or keep the lights on.
Well, that's true. Others have said, well, it shouldn't just be President Trump. You got to look at President Moon. You've got to look at China and Xi and say, well, he's finally putting pressure on. But do any of those things happen without the forceful American leadership?
Absolutely not, Pete, because we have to remember President Trump took a lot of risks to get this far. We also have to remember that a lot of people said to the president, you need to attack North Korea, or you need to just do what President Obama did, which is strategic patience, more like strategic appeasement, and basically just let the North Koreans have nuclear weapons. The president took the harder road here and essentially put this maximum pressure campaign on the North, and I think that's what got us to the table. He also put pressure on the Chinese, which a lot of people said was impossible and can blow up in his face. But it worked.
Absolutely. At what point do we ever learn our lesson? Because before Winston Churchill, there was Neville Chamberlain. Before Ronald Reagan, who ended the Cold War, there was Jimmy Carter. And of course, before this president, there was Barack Obama. What other lessons, when are we going to learn that strength is what actually brings people to the table and brings down evil empires?
You know what? It's strength, Pete, but it's also diplomacy as well. We have to remember that we put a lot of pressure on the North Koreans, but we also said that there is a seat for the table of them in the world community if they are willing to change their policies. And I think that's important. Nobody wants to ostracize them, and nobody wants a war with the North Koreans. But if they are willing to give up their nuclear weapons in a verifiable way where we can prove that they've done it, there's great things ahead for them. So I think that's important.
Harry, to strengthen your case, the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize that was given to Barack Obama was for his, quote, extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. If that handshake at the DMZ was not cooperation between peoples, I don't know what is. Harry, thanks for making the case. Appreciate it this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, well, coming up, a tale of two Washingtons. The president rallying his base in Washington Township, Michigan, as journalists roast him in Washington, D.C. Does it show the swamp still doesn't understand why he won? We're going to debate it next. And she once had dinner with Vladimir Putin. Now Jill Stein is refusing to comply with Congress over Russian interference? Welcome back. A couple of quick headlines for you, some good ones. New Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is on his way to Israel to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The two will discuss the fate, or lack thereof, of the Iranian nuclear deal. Earlier today, he met with Saudi King Salman in Saudi Arabia. His final stop will be in Jordan this afternoon. And speaking of the Middle East, the embassy quarters in Jerusalem could be named Trump Town. Israel's construction minister has already ordered the planning of a new section of land for embassies from around the world. The move coming as other nations are expected to follow President Trump's lead, also moving their embassies to Jerusalem. Trump Town. Griff, down to you.
Thanks, Pete. Thousands of Michigan voters rallying with President Trump yesterday as he skipped the White House Correspondents' Dinner and its scathing attacks.
I could call Trump a racist or a misogynist or xenophobic or unstable or incompetent. Tonight, I'm going to try to make fun of the president in a new way, in a way that I think will really get him. Mr. President, I don't think you're very rich. I think you might be rich in Idaho, but in New York, you're doing fine.
Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu adding on Twitter, "Dear Donald Trump, U.S. auto sales dropped 8%, Ford is shedding most of its car lineup, and GM is cutting 1,500 jobs. But I'm super excited you're doing another unhinged MAGA rally. While it's tough to watch too much of your toxic rallies, they do energize Dems. Thank you." Does this prove the D.C. swamp still doesn't understand why Donald Trump won? Here to debate it, Democrat strategist Antoine Seawright and radio talk show host Tony Katz. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good to see you.
How are you? Antoine, let me give you the first crack because, you know, the rally now for the second time the president skipped the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The rally clearly got a lot of attention last night. What did you make of the dueling rallies, and what did you make of President Trump's rally?
Well, I thought that the president went to where he's comfortable. He went back to the campaign trail, essentially. And he went back to rhetoric that he is used to and where he gets applause from his base. He started doing what Donald Trump does best, and that's misleader-in-chief. He started peddling the right-wing red meat rhetoric, and it got his crowd going. But the truth of the matter is, in Michigan, where he was at last night, the African-American unemployment rate is the second highest in the country, next to only Washington, D.C. People in Flint, Michigan still do not have clean running water. The truth of the matter is, I think the congressman said in his tweet, U.S. auto sales have declined. And so the president has some work to do in the state that he won in the last election cycle.
Tony, let me bring you in and get you to respond to what was clearly by many folks that were attending the dinner and others watching an over-the-top scathing attacks by Michelle Wolf. What did you make of the White House Correspondents' Center?
Well, let's take it all as you guys just brought it up. Ted Lieu doesn't know what he's talking about, and everybody is fully aware of this. You've got Infosys in my state of Indiana that's bringing 3,000 jobs, 11,000 jobs total to the U.S., 3,000 to Indianapolis with an average wage of somewhere between $60,000 and $120,000. The vice president was in Indianapolis to make sure he was there for that announcement, just proving that things are growing and things are building. As some things lessen, many more things are increasing. And as for Michelle Wolf and that entire experience there at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, how does it not prove that President Trump was right not to show up, to not be a part of it, not to witness this attack on his press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders? We should all be concerned, Antoine, with what's going on in Flint. We should absolutely fix it.
Tony, that's a good point. Let me let you respond, Antoine. Michelle Wolf clearly went to a much harsher spot in attacking the White House press secretary. She obviously was composed about it, but we heard groans in the audience. What did you make specifically of Wolf's attacks on Sanders?
Well, I think we all know what the White House Correspondents' Dinner is, and it's been that way since the dinner's been in existence. But I want to go back to one of Tony's point. The congressman is absolutely right. GM has cut 1,500 jobs in the United States. It's pure fact that automakers like Ford are cutting back on their American-made cars, and the fact of the matter is that U.S. car sales are down in this country. So you can't run away from this fact. You can have emotional arguments of whether you think it's true or not, but the truth of the matter is facts are non-disputable.
Tony, let me bring you back to Wolf, because I think that is something that's really getting a lot of attention today. Are you surprised that there are no calls from women's groups defending Sarah Sanders this morning?
Well, I don't know if there have been yet. What I'm saying is I don't think we're going to hear a single one. That's part of the problem. We don't accept conservative women as women. That's a huge issue. Ask conservative women all across the country about whether or not they're considered by women's groups as women's. Antoine, wait a second. They're not considered women. They're not given the same credibility. They're not given the same respect. They're not given the same protection. It's obvious. It's everywhere. It's constant. It's consistent. It's horrific, and it's wrong. So I'm not expecting it, but man, it would be nice to see for once.
Tony,
your party has been abusive of women this entire time.
Hold on, guys.
Stop it.
It's Sunday morning, and I appreciate you coming on, and we can probably have this all day long. Thank you for coming on, Antoine and Tony. Have a good Sunday, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, coming up, that caravan of Central American migrants arriving at the border today. So how should the U.S. handle the situation? We'll talk to the head of a Border Patrol union. Plus, Charlie Hurt, Byron York, Nigel Farage, and Mercedes Schlapp, who was at the dinner, by the way, and walked out, all here live. And it's the best story of the draft, if you watch that. A one-handed linebacker getting the call from his brother's team. The story behind the pick that's captured America's hearts.
It is your shot of the morning. A cow telling a It's in the prompter. Texas deputy to move over.
Oh, Pete.
I'll read anything. Charging his patrol car.
Police dash cam video capturing the beef while the deputy investigated a car accident caused by the animal. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, including the cow, which ran off utterly upset.
Wow.
How much time did our producer spend on writing that script?
It's very creative.
Good job, writers. Well done.
Hey, we've totally underestimated cows all this time.
Yes.
The power of cows.
That's right.
Well, I never have. They're tasty.
Don't get in their way. All right, well, moving on to some other headlines we are following. Former Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein refusing to comply with the Senate's probe into Russian meddling. The Intercept reporting that Stein's campaign denied part of the Intelligence Committee's request for documents related to policy on Russia. Stein, who was photographed dining with Vladimir Putin in December of 2015, called the request an overreach. Also this, as a cold-blooded cop killer is walking free, one of his victim's brother is outraged over that release. Waverly Jones's brother Manny telling the New York Daily News, quote, "I always said Herman Bell could get out when my brother comes back to us. Now he's out, but I don't see my brother." Bell was released Friday after serving time for his role in the ruthless murder of NYPD officers Joe Piagentini and Jones back in 1971. And a brother and sister reuniting after losing their parents and baby sister in a tragic car crash. Look at this heartbreaking photo, the accident, leaving 8-year-old Angie and 5-year-old Zachary Clemens in critical condition and injuring their 2 younger brothers. An SUV striking their vehicle in Texas, killing their parents Jim and Carissa and 8-week-old sister Juliana. So if you'd like to help the 4 siblings with medical costs, head to foxandfriends.com. Their great aunt will join us live tomorrow morning. It is a heartbreaking story, and of course we want to help them as much as we can. All right, well, the University of Texas now treating masculinity as a mental health issue. Are you listening, Pete? A newly launched program is urging male students to, quote, take more control over their gender identity and develop a healthy sense of masculinity. The program warns that men who enjoy taking care of people or being active is dangerous, claiming traditional ideas of masculinity place men into rigid boxes, preventing them from developing their emotional maturity. I wish you could see Griff and Pete's face.
He fed me pizza. That's very appropriate.
Thoughtful.
Did that violate masculinity?
I feel like I'm
looking out for his
flexible
brother
with that. Yeah. Rick, you're a masculine guy.
I didn't even understand most of that.
Yeah.
Neither did I.
I was reading it all as you were reading, and I didn't
Why
get
it's
it.
not a real thing, Rick.
Is that why?
Rick,
It's
just-
not meant to be understood?
Don't change. Just stay the way you are.
Is it supposed to like understand the subtleties of what was like written in between those lines, maybe?
Stay golden. Stay golden, Pony Boy.
Yeah, all right. Guys, here you go. It's chilly again across parts of the Northeast, especially around the Great Lakes. You're at freezing, 32 in Chicago, 37 in Cleveland. Down to the south, you're a little bit better, but overall, the eastern part of the country where we're pretty dry, except for parts of the Northeast. And this is a system that's moved through, and it's bringing the rain showers and snow back behind us. Snow across parts of upstate New York. It's going to stick around this entire system. Scattered showers throughout the day today, scattered showers throughout the day tomorrow, and then a big warm-up. And along with that warm-up, this is a look at Wednesday afternoon. We're looking at the potential for a big severe weather situation, actually Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But Wednesday, I think, will be the biggest day of it, possibly some big tornadoes. And we haven't had a lot of that, especially here across Tornado Alley. This likely the big day of it on Wednesday. So heading into May, biggest severe weather month of the year. Everybody needs to be watching it closely.
Thank you, Rick.
You bet.
Thank you, Rick. And thank you to Rick. I want to give a quick shout out because Rick also was checking up on me last night, as was Abby and all the producers. Rick sent us nice
It's a good team
Hey,
here.
man, are you okay?
I love that.
Good man, Rick. Well, our couch just got a lot more masculine as well. We got Big Daddy here. Because the NFL is making dreams come true. Watch.
With the 141st pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Shaquem Griffin.
And one of the more heartwarming scenes over the weekend was that of Shaquem Griffin, a one-handed linebacker from the University of Central Florida, receiving a call from the Seattle Seahawks, letting him know that his dream of being in the NFL was finally realized.
Griffin was one of 256 players chosen in the NFL draft. And here to break it down, the winners and the losers is, of course, Rich Big Daddy Salgado of Coastal Advisors. Always good to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Always. Good
So
morning.
tell us about that story. I mean, how are you going to be...
His dream come true.
You know what? I'll tell you, it's so heartwarming, that story, and everyone had to be cheering for him. I mean, like, I got to watch him play twice this year, you know, and it's just incredible. And it's great that he's going to be with his brother. And the one thing that I'm looking forward to is seeing him be on that kickoff team and in front of the 12th man.
Yeah.
You know that stadium is going to be, it rocks already. Just imagine when he goes out there.
He's going to have a big fan base for all those games, you can tell.
Exactly.
During the draft, by the way, on Griffin, they show him benching like ungodly amounts of weights in the training stuff. And so from an inspirational point, what he brings to that team is going to be really a motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the place that got him ready for the draft down in Dallas when I was there. You know, Michael Johnson, the Olympic sprinter, was working with him. They trained him and everything, and they were like his heart. They'd never seen anybody with such desire, passion, and heart like his.
Very cool. Well, break down the draft for us. Give us a couple of winners, teams that won, great draft picks, and teams that maybe missed the mark.
Well, you know, I know you're a Vikings guy, so we're not going to start there. But all right, you know what? The Cleveland Browns, did a great job.
Well, they had the first pick.
They had the first pick, and obviously they shocked everybody with going with Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
But, you know, after that, they got the DB they needed. They have an offensive lineman that they needed. Then, you know, my beloved Giants, I think they did outstanding. They got two guys in Barkley and Hernandez that are probably going to be day one starters.
I mean, Barkley could end up being they say one of the best running backs of all time if he puts it all together.
Puts it all together, yeah. And
who lost?
You know what? The Saints, that one really shook me up because I thought the trade, so many picks, and then the trade up to get a defensive end where everybody probably thought they were going to take Lamar Jackson because it would have been great with that, you know, Sean Payton offensive mind and this guy pulling the strings after Drew hangs him up.
So a lot of who dat for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I
Can
think
I just give a quick shout out to Mr. Irrelevant of the group, number 256, the last pick of the NFL draft, Trey Quinn, because you know what? You're not irrelevant anymore.
Yeah,
we know your name.
Yeah, listen, and he gets the free trip out to California.
Oh, that's
cool.
Yeah,
I think he goes to Disney World if I stand corrected. You know.
Very cool.
Good.
All right, Big Daddy, thanks for being here this morning.
And I want to give a quick shout out to my favorite referee, Dan, who had surgery. He was laid up. Paralyzed, but he had some surgery, so now he's back up on his feet. And, you know, I hope to see him throwing flags later on.
That is
not too many flags, though.
Yeah, not too many flags.
Feel better. All right.
Big Daddy, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
President Trump warning as the migrant caravan arrives at the U.S. border.
They know once they get here, they can walk right into our country. We have the greatest people on earth, and they can't do anything because the laws are corrupt.
So how should our government be handling the illegal immigration surge? We are going to ask the head of a Border Patrol union next.
Plus, Charlie Hurt, Byron York, Mercedes Schlapp, she actually walked out of the White House Correspondents' Dinner last night for the right reasons, and Nigel Farage, all here live, coming up.
Strawberry champagne on us. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what.
They know once they get here, they can walk right into our country. We have the greatest people on earth, and they can't do anything because the laws are corrupt.
That was President Trump last night, calling out the caravan of Central American asylum seekers as they set to arrive at the border today.
So how should the U.S. handle this? Here with Inside President of the Local 2544 National Border Patrol Council, Art Del Cueto. Art, it's good to see you again. You know, this is going to be an interesting day, and there's a lot of eyes on that border. How's this going to be handled?
You know, it's a good question. One of the big issues that we are seeing that's happened in the past is a lot of these individuals, they cross with children. So they've caught on how it works. Usually the mom will cross with their child. They will be released in the United States, pending, obviously, the asylum case. And a lot of these people never show up to their cases. What they would do in the past is they would catch the father, and the father would be returned. Well, they caught on to that. So what happens now is the mom shows up one day with the child, gets released. We never find them. The next day, the father crosses with his child, and we never find them either. So they've learned to game the system, and that is one of the big issues.
So just to follow up, so you're saying the message is going out to these migrants, bring a kid, you'll get in and not get prosecuted.
That's what they've been doing in the past. That's what they've continued to do. Obviously, we've heard that there's attorneys that have gone to Mexico that have spoken to these people in the caravan. They've explained to them. They've told them what to do, what not to do. I mean, it's just, it is President Trump said it best. We got to fix some of these corrupt laws. I mean, he's doing a fantastic job bringing it to light, explaining what needs to be done. But, there's some people in the middle that need to figure it out. We've been hearing about this caravan for quite some time. We knew they were coming.
Well, that's right,
Art. Should have
Art.
figured out what to do when they got here.
So we shouldn't be surprised that they're gaming our catch and release system. People are able to talk about what works and what doesn't. What has been done or could still be done in the immediate term to change this incentive and to change the system so they don't game it?
The reality is, they're coming through Mexico. Mexico has allowed them to come through their country, knowing that their entire intentions are to come illegally into the United States to game the system. I think Mexico needs to take some of that responsibility too. The way I see it, Mexico and their government has been aiding and abetting these individuals to enter and invade our country.
But they were given asylum. So Mexico even gave them asylum in Mexico. So beyond, and I'm not giving them credit for that. That's just,
right.
These folks are actually seeking asylum. They already have a country to have asylum in if they want to, but they want to come to the U.S. So what more can the Border Patrol or ICE or Homeland Security do at this point?
So if they're leaving their country and they're having issues in their country and they're seeking asylum, they're choosing to come and get asylum in the United States. But in the meantime, they've received asylum in Mexico. Shouldn't Mexico be able to take them in? And if we apprehend them, shouldn't we be allowed to send them back to Mexico instead of having to use all our resources to send them back to their country? And even more so, shouldn't somebody else take responsibility if they've allowed them through their country? But instead, we're having to take them in. We're having to go through the asylum cases. It takes forever to get to a judge. And in the end, we don't know where these people are going to end up. And we don't know their intentions. There's really no way to see their true criminal records in the country of origin. So we don't know what record or criminal record they have in the country that they're coming from.
We don't know what we're getting. Yeah.
We do know we're going to get to see them.
Getting.
They're going to apparently caravan to a specific spot on the border this afternoon. We'll find out what happens. Wow. And we wish for the best for the Border Patrol for a safe transition to whatever happens. Art Del Cueto, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, President Trump slamming Democratic Senator Jon Tester, calling for him to resign after his allegations about Admiral Ronnie Jackson. Charlie Hurt says this could all backfire come November.
And what's so offensive about this shirt? It says, it's backwards on your screen, but it says "Just Pray?" ? This teacher told to take it off.
Welcome back. Well, two big initiatives coming from the FDA this week dealing with the issues of menu labeling and e-cigarettes. Our own Dr. Mark Siegel of the Fox News Medical A-Team sat down with FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, and Dr. Siegel joins us now. What an interesting interview that you had. I'm excited to play these clips, but let's start with the labeling on menus, because there is bipartisan support for that. This is about health, but it's also about educating people.
Exactly, Abby. It comes from the Affordable Care Act, and they've delayed a year putting it into place, but it's all about calories on menus. And Dr. Gottlieb feels that it's a way to fight the obesity epidemic. It's also a way to have a new business model where you get healthy choices rather than choices that are bad for you.
Exactly.
Let's take a look.
If you have information on menu labels, the average consumer will reduce their caloric intake by 30 to 50 calories a day. And that turns out to be about 3 to 5 pounds a year that you can lose by just having better information. And if you believe the data, which shows that the people become obese just by eating an incremental 64 calories a day, if you can reduce caloric intake just by making information available by 30 to 50 calories a day, you're a long way towards achieving the target of reducing caloric intake enough to actually affect obesity rates.
But you also feel that it will lead to, it's actually pro-business? Because
it's pro-competition, because restaurants are going to probably reformulate their foods in ways to make them more healthful. Certain consumers are going to want low-calorie options. You know, some consumers are still going to opt for the high-calorie option, but they'll know what they're getting.
Right, that's the key. People know what they're getting. You go and you look at a menu and you say, you know what, that salad looks a lot healthier. I'm going to go that direction versus the pizza.
Exactly, and he says these menus are not that expensive. A lot of the manufacturers are already complying with delivery menus. He thinks that this is going to be something very, very useful and will help us cut down without actually adding more to the dollar. As you pointed out, healthy choices may be more expensive. Right. A business may make more money with that. A restaurant chain's going to make more money. So I also talked to him about about e-cigarettes and about...
Which is a big thing today because I see specifically young kids smoking e-cigarettes. And I wonder, is this really a healthier option for them? What did he say?
And he thinks it's a gateway. It leads to smoking cigarettes. And he's very disturbed that nobody's being compliant on this, that children are getting too many e-cigarettes when they shouldn't. FDA clamping down. Take a look.
I'm very concerned about youth becoming addicted to nicotine through things like e-cigarettes. We do think the e-cigarettes could offer a potential opportunity for adult smokers to transition off of combustible tobacco. We're going to take very vigorous enforcement steps to crack down on the youth use. You're going to see a series of enforcement actions from FDA against manufacturers and outlets that are selling products to children to crack down on that.
Tough words, sir. That's important to hear, though.
Very, very important. E-cigarettes are a huge problem. They lead to nicotine addictions. FDA is fighting it.
Dr. Mark Siegel, great interview. Great to have you on this morning. Thank you so much. And you're responsible for taking care of our Griff Jenkins, so we love you for that.
Well, and I brought my stethoscope today, just in case.
Smart, very smart. All right, coming up, Charlie Hurt, Byron York, Mercedes Schlapp, and Nigel Farage, all live here on the show. 3 more big hours to come on a Fox and Friends Sundays. Keep it here.
I just wanna be a